Hey, everybody. Um, WandaVision is better than The Mandalorian. I don't know how controversial that statement is going to be with my audience, but 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 as of today, that is the emotion of my heart. Anyway, and maybe we can talk about that later if anybody has questions about it in the live chat. I didn't get any WandaVision or Mandalorian questions uh, in my patron questions, so we'll just have to see how it goes. But yeah, welcome everybody. Tony disagrees. Tony's wrong. No spoilers, Vovicat. No spoilers. But WandaVision is better than The Mandalorian. Yes, they're both great. I'm not no no. I'm not meaning to throw shit on The Mandalorian. The Mandalorian is a good show. WandaVision's a better show though. Anyway, before we get into all of that, I want to say welcome to everybody. Thank you all for watching. And as usual, we are going to start by digging into questions that have been asked by my wonderful Patreon patrons, who are the folks whose generosity allows me to continue to do what I do here on this channel, whatever that is. So we're going to start by answering patron questions. Then when I get through the patron questions, I will turn my full attention to the live chat. So if you're watching in the live chat, and you have a question that you want me to answer or something you want to talk about or whatever, anything that you want to put in the live chat that you want me to notice and respond to, please hold on until I get through the patron questions, and then I will turn my full attention to the live chat, and we'll go from there. So let's turn now to the patron questions. The first of which is from Andrew Priest, who says, "Hi, Steve. You know how modern Star Trek is bleak and dark and horrible? You know how it used to be suitable for kids of all ages to watch? You know how New Trek isn't suitable for kids because they said fuck about half a dozen times now? Well, I was just wondering, what was your favorite kid-friendly, fun for the whole family part of Trek Classic? Was it the multiple deaths almost every episode? Or what about the planet full of drug addicts all suffering from withdrawal? There was also the conversion therapy planet where they cure gender deviance. How about the depictions of torture or suicide or genocide or homicide or any of the other sides? I think the most toddler suitable moments from Trek were Tasha's rather vivid descriptions of Turkana 4's rape gangs. Trek has always had an undercurrent of darkness to it. Why do people insist on judging the new shows by standards they don't use to critique the older ones? Excellent question. I do think it is fair to say that the new Trek shows are adult in a way that older Trek shows weren't. I do think it's fair to point that out, and I think that is an accurate assessment. I don't think it's reasonable to say that because of that they are bad or because of that they aren't real Star Trek. But I do think it's fair. Yeah, and you're right. Older Star Trek has always been willing to go to dark places or deal with dark themes or have characters with dark backstories. In the case of Tasha, almost shockingly dark backstories, like backstories that are so dark that they kind of clash with how not dark the rest of the show is. Like the Tasha's backstory, especially the rape gang thing, which is mentioned several times in season one, is so dark that it really feels out of place on a show like Star Trek: The Next Generation. But yeah, that is an example of Star Trek being willing to go to dark places, or at least reference really dark things, long before the so-called New Trek era. But even with that being said, I think it's fair to point out that the newer shows are more adult than previous shows have been. I don't have a problem with that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think that I do not consider that to be a problem with the newer shows. I've done reviews of Discovery and Picard and Lower Decks as well, and I have gone through the problems that I have with those shows, despite the fact that overall I mostly really like them. They do have problems. Being too adult, characters saying fuck too many times, that is not those are not problems with those shows as far as I'm concerned. But I do think it's fair to point out that they are more adult than previous versions of Star Trek. But you're right. You're totally right that it's always had an undercurrent of darkness to it. Next question is from Michael Hanneline. Hey, Steve, I know you said before you aren't really into games, but I was wondering if you'd consider checking out The Captain is Dead. It's a just released indie computer game based on the board game of the same name. It works on nearly any computer. It's a thinly veiled parody of Star Trek, where your familiar looking ship is under attack from aliens. The warp core is down, shields are failing, spatial anomalies keep happening, and invaders are beaming aboard. You control a variety of crewmen, not the captain, he's dead, to try and get the jump core running again before you're blown to space dust. My favorite crew is the crewman, a red shirt whose special ability is dying. It's a game of strategy and thinking, not reflexes and aim, and you can play it by yourself or with friends who cooperate with you not to die. I'd be happy to gift it to you on Steam if you want. I don't work for AEG or anything. It's just based on my favorite board game, and I want other Trekkies to know about it. I can't promise that I'm going to check it out, but I will try to keep it in mind. You are correct that I am not really all that interested in video games, but the way you describe it makes it sound interesting. So I might check it out. And if I do check it out, I will definitely mention it on an upcoming live stream or say something to you about it on Patreon or something, since you were so kind as to recommend it to me and make it sound interesting. But I can't promise I'm going to check it out. But if I do, I will let you know. Carlisle the Cinephile says, hello there, Steve. I find myself thinking about tropes in superhero stories again. This time, I'm pondering the concept of secret identities. It's always left me somewhat confused. The superhero always cites the reason why they keep their secret as the fact that they don't want to put their loved ones in harm's way. But this seems to do nothing because those loved ones are put into jeopardy anyway. Wouldn't it make a hero's loved ones more prepared to deal with potential supervillain attacks if they're aware of the truth? And wouldn't that make their relationship dynamic more healthy? If they have all the information, wouldn't they be able to make a more informed choice about whether this is a relationship they want to be involved in? Wouldn't that create a relationship based on trust and honesty rather than lies? I'm not saying every hero should go full Iron Man and reveal their identity to the entire world, but isn't it reasonable to at least tell those who are closest to you? Yeah, and I feel like we've seen there are examples of exactly what you're saying going back, to the very beginning. I mean, remember, Superman keeps his secret identity a secret from most people, but his parents obviously always know, and his parents, at least in the modern age, when Jonathan and Martha are established as still being alive, because in the golden age and the silver age, it was usually portrayed that Superman's parents were dead, whereas in the modern age, especially after the Crisis reboot in the mid '80s, Jonathan and Martha were still alive, and obviously they knew that Clark Kent was Superman, and they were depicted as being probably the two people the closest to him in the world. Clark was always shown to have a very, very good relationship with his parents. So they weren't protected by not knowing his secret identity. And eventually Lois found out too. And it wasn't the end of the world. Mary Jane eventually found out that Spider-Man was Peter Parker. You mentioned the example of Iron Man, where eventually everybody knows that Tony Stark is Iron Man. People close to Bruce Wayne know that he is Batman. Not everybody, obviously, but again, his closest relationship arguably is Alfred. Alfred knows. He's not protecting Alfred from anything by keeping the secret identity away from him. All of the members of the Bat team, of the family, they know. I mean, those are, other than Alfred, those are the people he's closest with, the various Robins, Dick and Barbara, and the people that he spends the most time with and has the most trust in and who put the most trust in him. They all know. They're the people that are closest to him. Like, who else is there? So yeah, that is the reason given. But if you really think about it and you look at who are the closest people to that particular character, not always, but quite often, the people closest to that particular character are people who know the secret identity. So it doesn't really wash, like if Clark Kent is meant to protect the people close to him, I guess you could argue that he's protecting the people who work with him at the Daily Planet. He's protecting Perry and Jimmy and the rest of the gang at the Planet. You could make that argument. But I mean, he's not protecting his parents. And if you are reading a version of the character where Lois has found out the secret identity, he's not protecting her in that way. So yeah, I think it's It's a really interesting question, and it's a really interesting thing to think about, because I think if you really do consider it, there are quite a few exceptions to that. Well, I maintain the secret identity to protect those closest to me. There are many examples where not just people close, but the closest people are in on the secret identity. Eric Byer says, has Toby Benson been involved in tracking down the people who attacked the Capitol building on January 6th? A lot has changed since he challenged his students to collect 100 MAGA hats. I have not talked to Toby Benson for a while. I don't expect to hear from Toby Benson anytime soon, so I can't tell you for sure, but knowing what I know about Toby Benson, I suspect he has been involved in some way. Yeah, I would guess, but I don't know, because Toby and I, unfortunately, are not in touch anymore. Yeah, I would guess, if I had to guess, I would say he was involved in some way. Yes, that sounds like him. Orion McMurray says, hello, Steve. I hope you and Stuffy are doing well. I had finished watching DS9 and will have to agree with you that it is probably the best Star Trek show out there. My question pertains to the character that I love to hate on, Win Adami. I had a dislike to her when we first met her on the show. She seemed a little oily at the start, and she got progressively worse as the show went on. Her dislike for the protagonist, Cisco, was clearly palatable. She was unhappy that the prophets chose an off-worlder that she could not manipulate, as a Bajoran would probably be. The actress who plays the character in the show is quite good. What is your opinion about her? I love Win. She's one of my favorite characters on the show. She is an awesome villain. And the actress who plays her is, of course, Louise Fletcher, who is an Oscar winner, who won Best Actress for playing Nurse Ratched in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. She is perhaps one of the most skilled and decorated actors to ever play a regular or a recurring role on a Star Trek show. I mean, you cannot overstate how upper echelon Louise Fletcher is as an actor, and how incredibly cool it was, especially for me as a teenage film nerd, to see Louise Fletcher show up on a Star Trek show, and not just show up on a Star Trek show as like just, in one episode, but she becomes a recurring character throughout the 7 years of the show. She's great. And Win is a great character. And, Dana and I are watching Deep Space Nine on Trek reluctantly every other week. We're switching off between DS9 and Firefly, and we haven't gotten to the introduction of Vedic Win yet. But when we do, I'm really looking forward to seeing what Dana thinks of Win, because I think she's an awesome character, and she remains an awesome character, and just becomes more and more interesting the more the show goes. So I'm a huge fan of Win. She's one of the best characters on the show, I think. Played by one of the best actors to ever appear in any Star Trek production. Stephen Sutton says, this past Sunday morning I awoke, drew open my bedroom curtains, and realized something. Because my curtain rings and the bar are both made of wood, when you draw the curtains at just the right speed, it can reproduce the opening sting to the song Common People by Pulp, i.e. the very first noise you hear before the instrumentals kick in. It's not identical, but close enough. If I pulled my curtains and then sang, she came from Greece, she had a thirst for knowledge, you'd know what I was doing. This leads me to my question. What is the dumbest thing that has made you smile recently? Oh, boy. Watching clips on Twitter today from watching clips on Twitter today from the My Pillow Guys documentary that came out today, the 3-hour absolute proof thing that he claims proves definitively that the election was stolen from Donald Trump, and here's all the evidence you need. Watching some clips from that Aaron Rupar had been tweeting, because I'm not going to watch the whole thing for 3 hours. That's ridiculous. But I'll watch little clips of it here and there that people are sharing. Of course, it's just as bonkers as you would think it is, and just as ridiculous and not definitive evidence of anything. But also to see that within like 3 or 4 hours of it being posted on YouTube, it had already been taken down because it's wrongful information about election fraud. And YouTube is, like most other major social media platforms, is being really, really strict about content that promotes false information about the election. And you can't get much more false than the My Pillow guy taking 3 hours to spread a whole bunch of already very, very old, tired, long since debunked conspiracy theories. So the video was up barely long enough for people to have watched it. And it was taken off YouTube. So that made me smile. That made me smile. Just today, in fact. Eric Allen says, all right, Steve, it's the Universe series, and it's the Star Trek All-Stars, but no Data, versus the Star Wars All-Stars, but no Jedi powers. Who's your home run hitter, pitcher, and shortstop for each team? You can fill more positions if you wish. And who wins? I have Cisco as home run hitter, Spock as pitcher, and Archer at shortstop for the Trek team, Vader at home run hitter, Luke as pitcher, and Obi-Wan at shortstop for the Star Wars All-Stars. I have the Star Wars All-Stars winning on a crucial save from Obi-Wan. Okay, first of all, thank you for limiting it to 3 positions for me. I really appreciate that. So let me see. For the Trek All-Stars, I would say Worf will be the home run hitter. Let me see. I think Jake was the pitcher in the DS9 episode, in the baseball episode of DS9, wasn't he? I think so. So Worf will be the home run hitter, Jake will be the pitcher, and who'll be the shortstop? Let me see. Who'd be a good shortstop? Maybe Sulu. Sulu's small and wiry and quick. Maybe Sulu, but put Sulu on shortstop for Star Trek. And as for Star Wars, you got to have. I mean, Chewie would be the home run hitter. Luke would be the pitcher because being able to manipulate the Force, he would have a hell of a late breaking curveball, I would expect. And shortstop, let's say, who would shortstop be? I don't know. Fuck it, Mando. Throw Mando in somewhere. So yeah, and who would win? The Star Trek All-Stars would win. Because I think Chewie probably has more power than Worf, but I think Worf has just a better eye and more discipline at the plate. And I think it would come down to a slugfest. I think the eye as well as the power of Worf would overcome the sheer power of Chewie. And although obviously with Luke on the mound, I think the Star Wars team would have the advantage as far as pitching. But yeah, I would still give the edge to Star Trek. Here's a question from Dana. It's been a while since the general election. Can you think of anyone, must be a real person who is currently alive, who, if they had run against Trump, would have caused you to vote for Trump instead to keep that person from becoming president? Explain, supporting your answer with examples and reasoning. At first, I thought this was a tough question, but I thought about it for a few minutes, and actually it's pretty easy. I would say anybody who is an out and out, blatant, unapologetic, like literal neo-Nazi. Like if David Duke ran against Trump, and those were the only 2 viable options, I guess I would have to vote for Trump to stop David Duke from becoming president. If Richard Spencer ran and it was Spencer versus Trump, and those were the only 2 options, I guess that would be enough to get me to vote for Trump. Unless I thought that it would not be a close race. And I mean, if I thought that Trump was far enough ahead that he was going to win, whether I voted for him or not, that I could vote for a third party, then I would do that just for my own selfish reasons, just for the sake of my own conscience. but if it looked like it was going to be a close race and I had to vote for the non-blatant, I had to vote for the closet Nazi as opposed to the blatant Nazi, I guess I would vote for Trump to keep someone like David Duke or Richard Spencer. But it would have to be something like that. It would have to be something like that. The list of people that I would vote that would be bad enough to cause me to vote for Trump is not very long. David Colby says, okay, fine. Here's how a revolution would work. The first thing is to remember that violent revolutions can't really happen without support from the military, so disregard them. armed leftists exist more on a self-defense issue, make it so government using force on us will be more than what the government would be willing to pay. With that assurance, begin to attack the political strengths of capitalism through every means possible. Yes, that includes never being satisfied or happy with any Democratic politician ever. They're never going to be progressive enough, ever, full stop. If you get 2K checks, demand 5K checks. If you get union grantees, demand joint ownership of the means of production. Never allow them the comfort of thinking that we'll vote for them because the Republicans are worse. Next, use every other lever possible: strikes, mass protests, shutting down government buildings to prevent the machines of oppression from operating. There, now you know what SRG means. I can support all of those methods. Like, I'm, as far as like how would a revolution actually work, like all of those things you're describing are things that I could totally support under the right circumstances. So thank you for that. That seems acceptable, if it comes to that. But I mean, you still haven't explained what we do after the revolution. You know what I mean? Like, because you're still saying revolution. Like, it's not. I mean, never being satisfied with politicians, never accepting good enough as good enough. Like, that to me is not revolutionary. Saying, okay, $2,000 relief checks are good, but now let's push for 5,000. Like, that's not revolutionary. That's citizenship. That's demanding that the government live up to its responsibilities, not necessarily advocating to overthrow that government, but just pushing it to where it needs to go. And I'm 100% on board with that. Like, that doesn't even sound revolutionary in this sense to me. But the other stuff, like as far as the method of how do we bring about the revolution, that all sounds reasonable, I guess, if we get to the point where we decide that revolution is absolutely necessary. But it still doesn't satisfy my concern of, okay, let's say that the revolution does happen. Let's say all that stuff works, which isn't guaranteed that it would, but let's just say that it does work. What next? I would kind of want to know what that's going to be too. Andrew C. Hawkins, I was happy to hear you and Jason review Mulholland Drive. It would be awesome to hear you guys go through David Lynch's entire filmography, but that would require a whole new podcast. I'm curious, though, what is your general opinion of Inland Empire? With the possible exception of Wild at Heart, it seems to be the film that Lynch fans are the most divided on, and it was one that I appreciated more the second time I watched it. I have not seen Inland Empire, so I cannot comment on it. It's one of the few Lynch films that I just have never seen, so I can't tell you what I thought of it. So I apologize, but no, I can't. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it. But yeah, as we said during the, I'm sure Mulholland Drive will not be the last David Lynch movie that we review on Late Seating. You're right. I mean, we probably will not do all of his movies. Although who knows, maybe we will. Maybe we'll be doing this podcast for 20 years and we'll eventually go through all of David Lynch's movies. That would be great. But I mean, we're going to do Blue Velvet at some point. I have no doubt of that. We're going to do The Elephant Man at some point. I have no doubt of that. I'm sure we're going to do Eraserhead at some point. Like we're going to get at least the major landmarks in Lynch's career all out of the way at some point. I don't know when, obviously, but at some point I would be fairly certain that we're going to cover a lot more Lynch on Late Seating. Agent Meister. Hi, Steve. I recently watched the DS9 episode Melora, the one where the title character from a near-zero gravity world enlists in Starfleet. Because gravity is greater on the station, she is confined to a special wheelchair and uses a cane. The crew of the station, Dr. Bashir in particular, bend over backwards to help facilitate her, yet their helpfulness is repaid with rudeness, curtness, and even coming close to tearing Cisco a new one. She does not want to be treated any different to anyone else. I know the writers were using this as an allegory for people confined to wheelchairs or with other disabilities, but my beef is this. Almost anyone I know about confined to a wheelchair did not choose to be there. Melora, I assume, would have known what she was getting herself into and should at least show some gratitude for the help she was given. Your thoughts, please. Am I missing something? And if I am, please don't chew me out. Regards, Agent Meister in Ireland. I don't think you're missing anything. I mean, I think it's just those things you point out are the results of an imperfect metaphor in that episode. You're right. I think they're obviously using Melora as a metaphor for a person with disabilities in our own society, and because she is because she is in that situation with the higher level of gravity, through her own choice, it does kind of take away the sympathy when she is a jerk to people. But at the same time, you can also sort of understand why she might feel that way, why she might be sensitive about being condescended to, being helped too much, being treated too differently from other people, and feeling resentment toward that, or feeling like there is this expectation put upon her to be a certain way because all of these accommodations have been made. I don't think it completely drains all of the sympathy from her, but I do think it is an imperfect metaphor, and Star Trek often has those, and it seems like, especially when the show has tried to deal with disability in an allegorical way, that the metaphors the writers have come up with to use to explore the experience of being a disabled person uh, have not been quite satisfactory. I've read and heard many actual people with disabilities who have had, even some people who have liked some of these episodes, or expressed some appreciation that at least an effort was made, have had pretty serious problems with the way Star Trek depicts disability, or attempts to depict disability. And a lot of it is because they do it through metaphor, and the metaphors are just, usually, I would say, inadvertently, they come across as demeaning or condescending or misrepresenting what their actual experience as a disabled person is. So yeah, those are my thoughts. I don't think there's anything intentional in the episode, but I do think, because it isn't a very imperfect metaphor, that it comes across that way, that, um, that maybe Melora is being unreasonably rude to people, um, who are trying to help accommodate her disability, and that is not a message that I think would probably be very welcome for many people with disabilities, to say, "Oh, you should be more grateful for all the things that the abled people are doing for you. You should hold your temper and be more thankful for them bending over backwards for you." Like, I don't think that is the intended message, but I would not blame a disabled person from taking that from the episode, because of stuff like what we've been talking about. The Loneliest Monk. Why do you think the writers, creators of Star Trek started hating on Commodores, the rank, not the funk soul band of the 70s and 80s, after TOS? Since Star Trek the Motion Picture, only two Commodores, O, Picard, and Maxwell, Enterprise, are featured in the Star Trek verse, whereas TOS, TAS, and the motion picture feature a combined 10 Commodores. It seems funny that in TNG, admirals are gallivanting all over the galaxy to meet with Picard to give him orders, when they could just as easily have sent a Commodore. Not to mention in First Contact, where the Borg makes Admiral Hayes' ship go kaboom. Are there no Commodores out there to put the brakes on Picard taking over the fleet? Or in DS9, you would think Admiral Ross would be coordinating with his Commodores rather than dealing directly with Cisco. Did the Commodores do something wrong to be punished in this way? Are Commodores not a cool and exciting rank to write about? Oh well, holding out hope for more Commodores, the rank and the band. Um, I think it was probably just an example of the writers wanting to simplify things, of sort of the Commodore being perceived, and Commodore, in fact, being an intermediate rank between captain and admiral. And I guess the writers just said, we can simplify this for the sake of just not feeding into any unnecessary cluttering or confusion on the part of our audience. And we won't refer to Commodores very much, and we'll just go from captain to admiral, because that just makes more sense, and that's easier for the audience to sort of hold in their head, instead of saying, well, there's a captain and there's a commodore and then there's an admiral. I mean, captain and admiral are probably more familiar ranks to people in the audience, so we'll just simplify it. I think it was probably an example of that, and it wasn't necessarily any intentional disrespect for the rank of commodore, but just wanting to simplify things. That would be my guess. That would be my guess. And of course, in a way, it backfired, because among Star Trek fandom, especially in the 90s, when when I was just starting to become active in the fandom, Commodore was sort of like the cool rank. And in fanfic, there was a lot of Star Trek fanfic where there were characters who were ranked as Commodores because it was established as an existing rank in Starfleet thanks to episodes like well the oh, I can't remember the name of the episode now. Um but the the Doomsday Machine, the Commodore Decker in the Doomsday Machine in classic Trek, and then it kind of fell into disuse by the time TNG came around. So it was like this lost rank, and a lot of fanfic writers made use of that because they thought it was cool that there's this rank that nobody seems to have anymore. So it kind of backfired in that way, but I think that was probably the main reason why. Next question is from John Burns, and there's a link to a YouTube video that I didn't watch, but that's okay because it's summarized in the question. It says, this is part of an interview with Robert Downey Jr. In it, he's asked, could you make Tropic Thunder today? Which is interesting. What's wrong with some sequels? Time. You make a movie, you get loads of money, and so you decide to make a sequel. But some movies take a long time to develop, and some sequels are just slapped together. Plus, there's a decline in revenues with each sequel, which is why many all-female casts based on other movies isn't a wise idea. Remember Kelly's Hero? George Clooney did a quote-unquote sequel called Three Kings. Meh. What you need is a new idea, or a controversial one. So why not an all-female cast of Tropic Thunder today? I know the biggest problem about making a movie today is every idea has already been done, so why not go controversial? I enjoyed the Wonder Woman movie, haven't seen the 1984 one because the first one had some original ideas and was different enough to be enjoyable. What do you think? I don't think sequel-itis is necessarily the reason that all-female remakes have not been accepted. I think in some cases it's been because the movie just wasn't marketed very well, or maybe wasn't even that good. And a lot of it is also just because of sexism, because if you do an all-female reboot of a property that there is a large male fan base that has some really toxic elements that feels ownership over it, they are going to have a very shitty reactionary response to seeing, oh, but they're making our movie, but there's a bunch of women in it. They're taking something away from us. I think that's a lot of it, honestly. That's why the female-led reboots of things like Ghostbusters have not found the traction that the studios necessarily want to get. I did not think the all female Ghostbusters was as good as the original, but I certainly didn't think it was a bad movie at all. It made me laugh quite a lot. So I didn't think it certainly didn't deserve the hatred that was directed toward it by certain segments of the audience. But as for an all-female cast of Tropic Thunder, I mean, I don't know, was Tropic Thunder really that successful to warrant a remake in the first place? I don't know if Tropic Thunder is necessarily the right property to do that with. But yeah, I mean, you're right that it's not that every idea has already been done. It's that Hollywood does not traffic in new ideas. Hollywood traffics in what it thinks will be popular and what it thinks will be a good investment. And that means playing it safe most of the time and trying new things every now and then, hoping that you will find the next big thing that you can then overinvest in. And that becomes the thing you play it safe with. That's sort of what Hollywood does. They take just enough risks, just enough often to find the new thing that hits. And then they go all in on that for a while before they try to find the next thing. But yeah, I don't know if it's quite the sequel problem that would make the Tropic Thunder, the all-woman Tropic Thunder remake, a bad idea. Lee, aka Radical Bacon, I've been out to myself since around the Philosophy Tube Shakespeare stream. I've done things like change my preferred pronouns to they, them on Facebook and introduce myself to new people by just my last name, Lee. But recently I tore off the Band-Aid and just said that I wasn't a woman and I'd like to go by Lee in every social space I exist in on the internet. And everyone's been so supportive. I cried lovely, happy tears. No question. That's all. Well, Lee, thank you so much for sharing that with everybody else and me. That's awesome. I'm really happy for you for coming out, and I'm glad that it's been a positive experience and that people have been supportive. That's awesome. I'm very, very happy to hear that. And you mentioned Abigail's video, Philosophy Tube's video, her coming out video, and in the chat earlier. And yeah, I did watch it, and I thought it was wonderful. I thought she was wonderful in it. I was so happy for her. She looked happy. She looked relaxed and at peace with herself, and happy about coming out and presenting herself as she really is and as she really wants to be to the world. I thought the whole thing was great. So I'm so happy for her, and I'm happy for you, and I'm glad that it's been a good experience coming out and telling people. I think that's great. I think it's great. So yeah, good for you, Lee. Good for you. Next question is from Lisa Garrison, who says, speculation has been running rampant after some rumors started circulating that Jodie Whittaker is leaving her role as the Doctor during season 13. Personally, I'm hoping they're just rumors and we will see her back for season 14. But now I'm curious, what British actor or actress would you like to see become the 14th Doctor? Personally, I'm torn between Ollie Alexander and Abigail Thorne, the aforementioned creator and host of Philosophy Tube. I have absolutely no idea. I have no dog in this fight at all. I do not watch Doctor Who. I watched the Christopher Eccleston season, which was the first reboot season, and I watched the first couple episodes of the first David Tennant season, and then I haven't watched any after that. And it's not because I didn't like it. I liked what I saw. I just kind of stopped. I just sort of put it down and never picked it back up. So it's not like I'm anti Doctor Who. I just haven't watched a lot of it. So I don't know. Let me see. Let me look up something here. Let me see. There's somebody I'm thinking of, but I can't think of. Yes, Naomi Harris. For some reason, I couldn't think of Naomi Harris, but you want someone who is a British actor or actress who I think would be a good Doctor Who. I have no idea. I have not watched the show, but Naomi Harris is awesome. So if Naomi Harris wants to do it, let her do it. General Contact Unit Problem Child. Remember a while back I told you when the U.S. invaded Iraq, they stopped local elections from taking place and claimed it was to stop radical Islamists getting elected. You said even if that was their honest motivation, which it probably wasn't, the U.S. doesn't have the right to dictate what other countries can and can't handle democracy. Suppose right before the 2016 election, an alien race invaded the United States and claimed they were doing it because they'd predicted Trump was going to win, so they must take over until the United States is ready for democracy. Whose side would you take in the conflict? P.S. I told my dog, Steve Shives, wished him a happy birthday, and I think he understood. Or he was just looking at me because I was tickling his chin and making mouth noises at him. Definitely one or the other. Well, I'm glad the dog may have enjoyed the happy birthday wishes. I'm gratified that there is at least that possibility. I mean, in principle, I would say that I have to side against the aliens because the aliens have no right to come to our planet and dictate to. I mean, it's like, it's still our fault, right? Like if the aliens come down and say, hey, we need to stop you because you are going to elect Donald Trump and that's going to be a disaster. I feel like it's like, how else are we going to learn? You know, I mean, I understand what the aliens are trying to do, but really, how else are we going to learn as a society? And we're not going to, the truth is, we're not going to learn anyway. You know, like if the aliens stop us from electing Trump, if we elect Trump, like, we're not going to learn. We can't be taught, right? The United States, American society is like the opposite of Helen Keller in The Miracle Worker. We can't be taught. You can try to teach us touch sign language all you want. We're never going to figure out that you're signing water. We cannot be taught. We are not as smart as Helen Keller or as any number of other deafblind people who have learned to communicate in that way. We're just, as a society, just not that clever. So it's a waste of time. So from that perspective, I guess it doesn't really matter, does it? The aliens could stop us from electing Trump. The aliens could pull back and say, whatever. It really doesn't matter because we're never going to learn anyway. That answer Turned out a lot more nihilistic than I thought it was going to be when I started talking. Interesting. Dataport doll. Evening, Steve. I was doing chores this week, and maybe 30 minutes in, I noticed myself humming my favorite Avril Lavigne album from high school, an album I have not thought about in over a decade. But for some reason, beyond mortal comprehension, I was 3 songs in and barely missed a beat. My question this week, thus, is what are some songs or albums from your school days that have inexplicably stuck with you? I don't know about inexplicably, because I mean the explanation is that I, for better or worse, whatever it says about my taste in music, I genuinely love them. But there are tons of albums that I haven't listened to, uh, and I certainly haven't listened to all the way through as an album for a long time. But if I did right now, I could pick it up right away and I would know every word to every song. Tonic's first album, Lemon Parade, I could sing that shit backwards and forward right now. I haven't listened to that album, and I don't think I've listened except maybe to an odd song or two from it that's in my YouTube music playlist. I haven't listened to that for a long, long time. If I listen to it now, I know I could pick it right back up. Pretty much any Verve Pipe album, especially from Villains. Actually, no, not even Pop Smear, which was the album they did before Villains. From Pop Smear on through Underneath, I could pick up any of those albums and be right back into it and be able to sing along to everything. Same thing with probably Ben Folds 5 as well, with their whole from their self-titled album through Autobiography of Reinhold Messner. I could, because that was the soundtrack of my adolescence. And Billy Joel too. I haven't listened to a Billy Joel album and I don't even know how long, but I name your Billy Joel album, I could probably sing most, if not all, of the lyrics on that. Yeah, it's burned into my brain. Jacob Monroe. Hello, Steve. I was recently having a discussion with some friends after watching The Lost Battalion when we started talking about how everyone in the film was smoking, and in one scene, characters mentioned wanting cigarettes so badly that they steal some off of corpses of dead soldiers. It made me think about how smoking was so common back then, but now we look back and thought they were out of their minds. So my question is, what is something that seems normal now that you think will be looked down at several decades from now? Voting Republican. I really don't know. What's like a weird I really have no idea. I have no idea. I can't think of anything, Jacob. I'm sorry. I have no idea. Something that seems normal now that will be looked down at several days. I really don't know. I have no. I'm sure people in the live chat, feel free to discuss amongst yourselves and come up with some suggestions, because I got nothing. Carl Roberts, beautifulest one. Hey Steve, this week I watched VP Harris swearing Pete Buttigieg as Secretary of Transportation, or Secretary of Trans, as some people said. He revealed that before the ceremony, that she, being Harris, suggested that he be present to the moment, as it will go by quickly. That suggestion has stayed with me, and despite our country confronting and growing through its own terrible stage of development, I am choosing to remain present to the very powerful things that happen around me. One of those things has been finding your YouTube space. I'm so grateful to be in community with so many quirky, kind, intelligent, creative individuals so eager to learn and share. Thank you for following your vision and creating such a wonderful experience. Also, sending a special shout out to some random geek for all that he does to help for no other reason than he can. Such a beautiful example of being human, surrounding you and each member of this particular tribe, and wishes for continued joy. Well, thank you very, very much for that, my friend. I am always incredibly humble and grateful for your kind words. That's great, and I would second your shout out to Geek as well. He helps me out tremendously on the Patreon hangouts that we do once a month, and also with maintaining that list of charity links that I send people to at the end of every stream, and just being a good dude, just being a good guy. That I mean, we disagree on a lot, but he is, he's a really, really, really good person, and deserves that appreciation. And so do you. beautiful as well, because I'm so grateful that I have people like you, and specifically you as an individual in my audience. I must be doing something right if I have people that are as kind as you, and as curious, and just as delightful to hang out with and talk to as you are in my audience. I must be doing something right. So thank you again for being a viewer, and for being a patron, and for saying such nice things. That really means a lot to me. I appreciate it. Angus, if you were an evil Starfleet admiral, and you would be, admit it, what would be your evil plan? Perhaps you'd be plotting to get the Vulcans expelled from the Federation because their ears are too pointy, or that is simply a pet hate for you. Or maybe you prefer the old favorite of looking to steal the resources from a seemingly less developed species who turn out to be surprisingly advanced in their own way. Or you were conducting illegal tests that accidentally turned your entire crew into tribbles, and now you have to cover it up. So what might the scheme be, and which Star Trek captain would you choose to be your nemesis? I think probably the best nemesis for a rogue admiral would be Cisco. And what would my evil plan be? My evil plan, it's funny, Daniel, a friend of mine, messaged me on Facebook earlier, and compared Michael Lindell, the My Pillow guy, to the evil admiral in a Star Trek show, specifically to an evil admiral that Jason would play on our show, The Ensign's Log. And I thought about this question, and I thought maybe my evil plan as an evil, maybe my plan as an evil admiral would be to start an evil pillow company, and then to use that to build my profile until eventually I start to advocate for insurrection and the overthrowing of the Federation government. Maybe that will be my evil plan. Step 1, start a pillow company. Step 2, question mark. Step 3, try to overthrow the government. But Cisco would stop me, because you know he would. Joe McClory, with everything that happened in late December and early January, I have put off a question that I had for you. Are you generally against community policing now? Should we discourage people rerouting traffic around an accident until the police come, from escorting a mean drunk from a bar or stopping a robbery if we could do so safely? And if a community decided to handle most problems this way, and often went to individuals who were intimidating enough to end potential fights with the threat of an unwinnable fight, or people that were good at de-escalating when their time is to do so, do you think this would have led to mob justice if there were no one group of people with the authority to take charge regardless of the will of the community? That's a good question. I don't have a problem with that at all. I don't have a problem with anything that you're describing. People taking it upon themselves to direct traffic during an accident until police or fire department or whoever can get there to take. I think that's great. Or people de-escalating fights and not having the police call. I think that's awesome. I'm in favor of all of that. I also think that there should be police, that there should be a government, that there should be some agency or some entity to call if necessary when the situation calls for it. And obviously, the way that the police are, the way they conduct themselves, the way that we sort of fit them into our society needs some serious rethinking, needs to be reformed, needs to be moved much more toward peaceful resolution than overwhelming force and armaments and violence. But I think there should still be a police department. I think there should still be police that exist as an institution empowered by the government in our society. But that doesn't mean that I don't think we should have what you're describing there. I think you can have both. I think you should have both, especially. But I think the police department needs to be reliable. It needs to be honest, and needs to be something that the community can depend on, and something that is genuinely of service to the community, and not something that the community would have to fear. I think that's the big problem. But yeah, I'm not against that kind of community policing at all. No, certainly not. I just don't think that should be the only thing we have. Some aimless bullshit ideologist nerd, aka some random geek. It is now February. Trump is out of the White House and impeached a second time. The election is over. Can we now investigate Tara Reade's sexual assault allegations against Joe Biden? I believe Tara Reade. We did ask Al Franken to step down after women came forward and that photo surfaced. I would imagine the Democrats are serious about Me Too, or they were serious about Me Too until it became politically inconvenient for them. Biden himself said we should take women's claims seriously when Christina Blasey Ford came forward with her story against Brett Kavanaugh. And we have a lot of photos and footage of Biden touching women and girls inappropriately and smelling their hair, to the point that Biden even jokes about it on stage, saying, I asked this boy if it is okay if I touch him on the shoulder. Biden touches the boy on his shoulder. To be clear, it is time for Tara Reade's story to be heard and taken seriously. I agree with you. I agree with you. I think that her story should be heard and should be taken seriously. Um, it has been largely forgotten about. I think part of that probably is because there aren't that many Democrats who are too eager to reopen that can of worms now that Biden is president. But I also think that there are people in the media who investigated her story who have what they consider to be legitimate concerns about it. I read an article from Politico today that I had not seen before, that I had not read back last year when this was more of an immediate sort of current story. But there was the Politico reporter had spoken with Tara Reade a lot, and had even been trying to publish a story about her allegations against Biden back in 2019, and it never quite made it. Like, Politico never published a story about it back then. But back then, Tara Reade's story was that there had not been a sexual assault, but there had been a lot of inappropriate touching from Biden. And there are other women who corroborate that, or who have similar stories, who say that Biden would do things like you're describing, that he was joking about on stage, that he would, put his shoulders on people in a way that made them uncomfortable, that he would be inappropriately familiar as far as standing close to people or touching people, or just the way he would interact with women that made them uncomfortable and was not okay. And I think it's pretty, in my mind, it's pretty inarguable that those things happen. I feel like that's completely believable, and it is also, it's plausible that Tara Reade's more serious accusations happened as well, but there is not as much corroboration for that. That doesn't mean that it didn't happen, and it doesn't mean that I don't believe that it happened, or that I think she is making it up, or exaggerating, or saying something for whatever reason that isn't true. But it does seem to be a fact that there is less corroboration for that part of the story, and that part of the story was made public after the earlier parts of the story that were more easily corroborated about the inappropriate touching that did not rise to the level of sexual assault. So, yes, I agree with you. I do think it needs to be investigated. I do think she needs to be believed, and needs to be heard, and needs to be taken seriously, and that her claims need to be investigated and corroborated as much as possible. And I don't think it's something that should be ignored, you know. But yeah, but that Politico article, I thought, did a very good job of painting a picture of a very, very difficult, complex situation where, yes, it is obviously a situation where you want to believe the accuser, and you want to take these claims seriously, and you want to investigate them, but also having to acknowledge that there are parts of her story that, if not more believable than others, are at least much easier to corroborate than others, and that fit much more easily into an established narrative about Biden, the inappropriate touching, than the outright sexual assault, which does not seem to fit an established pattern of behavior with him, whereas the inappropriate touching seems to, unfortunately. So, but yeah, bottom line, I agree with you. It needs to be investigated and taken more seriously than it has been. I'm 100% on board with that. Isaiah Taylor says, so Steve, how do you feel about government jobs that can help people with disabilities like autism get better paying jobs, and jobs that they're good at? I've debated this concept with my conservative friends, whom I have not talked to since the Capitol riot, since they think that the left is violent, and they have told me the old "a job is a job" platitude. This is strange, since they always talk about being free and saying that you can do whatever you want, Anyway, back on topic. As you know, I really like airplanes and space travel, and I wish I could work at an air museum. I'm a dishwasher now at a restaurant. If you were the president, would you support a government jobs program that helps people with special interests find jobs, or do you believe in the traditional concept of having a crappy job that is used as a stepping stone to a better job? Your thoughts? No, I would be on board with something like that. I think it would be a great idea to make it easier for people to find work that fits their interest. I think that would be a fantastic idea. I'm not quite sure exactly how that would work, but if we could figure out a way for it to work, I would be thrilled about that. I think that's a great idea. I hate the idea that people end up stuck working jobs that are not related to their passion in life, that are just sort of miserable jobs that they have to do in order to pay the bills. I think that's I hate that. I don't think that's how things have to be or should be. And if we could come up with a government program that would make it easier for people to find placement in jobs that are more in line with their interests or their skills or what they want out of life, I think that would be fantastic. I would love that. I am not someone who believes in the concept of paying your dues just for the sake of it by having to do something shitty or miserable. I do think that misery can be character building. I do think that having to do things you may not necessarily want to do or choose to do if circumstances were different can be character building. But I am not an advocate for, well, life is supposed to suck until you get to a certain age. I don't think it has to be that way. And I don't think we are necessarily doing anyone any favors by making it that way. So I think it would be great if there were such a program. Absolutely. Vovacat17 says, okay, I am lost. Recently, my mom raised the concern that Navalny, the Russian opposition leader, is just another paid agent, and that if his people come to power, it will be much, much worse because they'll steal even more money. I tend to disagree on the first point, but the second one, I don't know how to argue with. She says that Russians inherently, because of strong Asian heritage and a unique mentality, can't have a fair democratic system. And the best thing we can do is the way of China. I know Republicans suck, but you are kind of glad to have them. Two parties allow you to have an adversarial system, which lets nobody cheat much. I wonder if we can ever have it the same way. Mom also says that the U.S. wants us torn into pieces so that it's easy to take our natural resources. And the U.S. kind of did exactly that to the Middle East. So who do I believe now? Every person in politics seems shitty. I never even liked Navalny. He might be a nationalist. If Russia as a concept is inherently undemocratic, should Russia end? Russia as a concept is only inherently undemocratic if the people of Russia or enough of the people of Russia decide that that's what it is. What your mom says about how Russians can't have a fair democratic system sounds really, really familiar. It sounds like what a lot of people in the West used to say, and sometimes still say, about people in the Middle East. You mentioned how it seems like people in the U.S. want to have Russia broken up, just like we did in the Middle East, and a lot of people have said that people in Middle Eastern countries, they can't handle democracy. They're not ready for democracy. They need a strong man. That was a really popular argument in Western politics as regards Middle Eastern politics. They need, Middle Eastern people, Arabs and Saudis and the Egyptians, and they need a king. They need a monarch. They need a dictator. They're not ready for democracy. I find that it's racist. First of all, it's racist. It's incredibly condescending. And I see no reason why I should believe that it's true for people in the Middle East or for Russian people. I just don't see why that is necessarily the case. I think there's no reason why the Russian people should not be able to have a democracy if that's what they want. Period. I do think that the Russian government has probably never been truly democratic. I think there's always been a great deal of corruption that has prevented a healthy democracy from taking hold there. But that doesn't mean that it's impossible. It doesn't mean that you're stuck with strong men and dictators and pretend Democrats like Vladimir Putin. That's the best you can do. I don't think that's true at all. Um, Maybe it seems that way to your mom because of cultural conditioning, because that's the way it's always been. But I don't think that's the way it has to be. I think the people, the Russian people, could have a democracy just the same as any other group uh, could have a democracy. And like I said, I think it's a really condescending and uh, racist thing to say that, well, especially the Asian thing, like, well, Russians have too much Asian blood in them to be good at democracy. Like, that's no, sorry, I don't buy that at all. I don't buy that at all. As Siamax says, afternoon, Steve. Hopefully this gets in on time. I'm interested in your thoughts in the vast disparity between the secret ballot House GOP members took on keeping Liz Cheney, number 3, strongly in favor secretly, versus the public vote where only 11 GOP members chose to disavow Q Lady. I believe our reps should vote publicly, but maybe we need to let some be private. Well, I do think that a secret ballot would get more Republicans to take more controversial votes, for sure. Yeah. I don't think there's any doubt about that, because they're cowards. And the thing that they're afraid of is their own constituencies. They're afraid that there are so many QAnon supporters, for example, that if they come out and say, oh, no, we should totally expel Marjorie Taylor Greene, or we should remove her from her committee assignments or whatever, that they're afraid that they're going to lose their seat because they will piss off their base, because there are so many radical far right Republicans in their constituencies that if they break from someone as absolutely bonkers and indefensible as Marjorie Taylor Greene, they will not be able to get reelected. So yeah, I think that a secret ballot would certainly result in more Republicans voting for that. But I also agree with you that their votes should be public. I mean, I think we the people have a right to know, but making it a secret ballot, I think it would definitely make a difference, because they're cowards. Because they're cowards. They're afraid of their own voters. And finally, last question from a patron is from Matthew Zeidman, who says, hi, Steve. I was wondering if you watched Alison Pregler's I Hate the Inner Light piece from last month. She made some pretty good points, I must admit. Yes, I did watch it. I watched it a couple of weeks ago. I thought it was a really good video. It's interesting. The Inner Light has never been one of my very favorite episodes. Like, if I'm thinking of my favorite TNG episodes, and certainly my favorite episodes of just all Star Trek, the Inner Light would probably not be on the list. But I don't hate it. I think it's a good episode. I think it's a really solid episode. It's definitely a good episode for Patrick Stewart. I mean, if you were a fan of Patrick Stewart as an actor, I think The Inner Light is probably pretty high on your list if you're judging it like best Picard episodes, because it's a really strong episode in terms of Patrick Stewart's role and what he gets to do as an actor there. And it's a neat idea. It's an interesting premise. A lot of what Allison says in her video is picking apart the premise and pointing out how problematic the premise is in terms of issues of consent and just sort of, why is it okay for an alien culture to do this, and what does this mean? What are they trying to accomplish? Aren't there better ways to have done this? Other than hijacking Picard's mind and putting him through this sort of mind fuck where he eventually comes to accept that this is his real life, and then he wakes up at the end and it's like, oh no, that wasn't my real life after all. I'm still on the Enterprise. And like, she makes a lot of very valid points as far as why that should not be seen as an acceptable method of cultural preservation. The way that the people of Catan chose to reach out to people in the future and tell about themselves. I think she makes a lot of really excellent points as far as that goes. but none of that really affects my enjoyment of the episode. I mean, I don't really think about that while I'm watching the show. So I don't feel the same way that she does. Like, I would never say I hate the episode. I would say I find it maybe a little overrated for people who say that it's one of the very best episodes of TNG or one of the very best episodes of all of Star Trek. I would not rank it that high, but I certainly don't think it's a bad episode. And I certainly don't have the same negative feelings toward it that Allison has. But yeah, but she does make good points. I agree with you. And it's a really, really good and well thought out and well reasoned video. Um, so yeah. So thank you, Matthew, for that question. Thanks to all of my patrons for all the questions. And now let us turn from the patron questions to the live chat and see how everybody in the live chat is doing. Hi, people in the live chat. Oh, Varjak's here. Hi, Varjak. Let's see what is going on. Oh, Varjak, I hadn't heard of that proposed sequel. That sounds terrible. The proposed sequel episode to The Inner Light where the Enterprise finds Picard's family. Yeah, that doesn't. I'm not a big fan of that. That does. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it would have been a good episode, but it doesn't. It doesn't jump out at me as like, yeah, they get. Too bad they didn't make that one. Yeah. Hi, David C. Drake. Let me see. Oh, super chat from John Burns. R.I.P. General Chang. So long farewell, Mr. Plummer. Yes, very, very sad news today. Christopher Plummer passed away, and of course, he was a giant of an actor. He had one of the great legendary careers in film. But of course, as Star Trek fans, I think of him mostly as General Chang, and I am going to do a General Chang video at some point, probably in the next 2 or 3 weeks, because probably the next 3 weeks, I would say, because next week is going to be another Where Do We Go From Here video that I finished writing today. And then the week after that is going to be the next Trek Actually that will be about the city on the edge of forever. And then the week after that will probably be a Christopher Plummer tribute video, mostly centered around General Chang and why General Chang is such an awesome character and is like my favorite Klingon character because I love General Chang so much. But yeah, rest in peace, Christopher Plummer. Many accomplishments in his career that surpassed Star Trek VI as far as acting. But so great, so great. Super chat from Vovacat says the thing about Mom is that she loves the Asian heritage ideas, wants monarchy, and thinks women should feel safe behind the backs of strong men. Yeah, that's interesting. Like she has. I mean, that I totally believe you there. That she doesn't view it as a bad thing, right? She doesn't think of it as a bad thing, but you think of it, and most people would probably, most sort of more liberal-minded people would hear that and go, "Jesus, Mom," but but she thinks of it. No, it's a good thing. Some random geek, is Star Trek VI my favorite movie with Christopher Plummer in it? It's the one that I've probably watched more often than the others. I can think of, I guess it's in that way it's my favorite, but I mean, he was so good. People, after I tweeted about it today, someone mentioned The Insider, where he plays Mike Wallace, and he is so goddamn good in that. That's a really, really good movie, and he is so good in it. And of course, he just last year he was in, or I guess in 2019 now, he was in Knives Out, which is a fantastic movie. And he was so good in that. So I think that he has been in better movies than Star Trek VI. But as far as movies I've watched a lot, yeah, Star Trek VI probably is my favorite, or at least the one I've watched the most. 255 AD. No, I'm not using the fact that he inappropriately touches people as an argument against him. No, I'm not saying that he's not guilty of it at all. I'm saying it needs to be investigated. I'm not, and I'm, and he may very well be guilty of it. I think we should treat the accusation as though it's legitimate and look into it as much as possible. I'm not saying that the fact that he inappropriately touches people means he didn't sexually assault. No, that's not what I'm trying to say at all. Carl Eusebius, yes, the Klingon for to be or not to be. Tak, pak, tak, pe. And Eric Allen asking me for my best cry havoc. Okay, here we go. I can't. You can't see me if I go back that far, but I have a swivel chair, so I can't. But I can't swivel the whole way around. But it would be something like "Cry havoc and let's slip the dogs of war," something like that. A better question says, Steve, did you start with political stuff? When, how did you decide to include your own take on things in your content? I've been doing that pretty much from the start. I'm just an opinionated asshole, and I put that into my into my content. Super chat from John Burns. Russia and China have nukes, so the U.S. won't mess militarily with them, meaning the power within Russia and China have to choose democracy. Well, yeah, the people have to choose themselves. I agree, yeah, the people have to choose themselves. We can't force it on them. Yes, thank you. Nice mic clipping. I appreciate that. Queer Pro Black says Mr. Avery Brooks may be open to returning to Star Trek. Thoughts? Excited? Yes, I will. I am holding. I am withholding my excitement until I get more verification of it. Right now, it's just a rumor or somebody's. I think like Sirach Lofton said, I talked to him and he's open to it, and somebody else has said similar things. Until I hear that Avery Brooks is going to be in a new Star Trek show as Captain Sisko, I will not be officially excited about it. But God, the prospect is incredibly exciting. Yes, I would love to see Avery Brooks. I would love to see Avery Brooks in anything. Frankly, he hasn't done very much acting at all in years. I would love to see him in anything. I would especially love to see him reprise the role of Sisko. That would be wonderful. But I am keeping my expectations at a manageable level until I hear that, that it's actually happening. Pedro Noguera says, I love when Steve screams, but I really like when he breaks down and cries in his videos. Steve, please cry. God, why would you want me to fucking cry? Oh my God, why? Why would you want me to cry? Jesus fucking Christ. God, why? You sick motherfucker. Is it that you just want me to feel pain? Is it you just want me to just go? You just think it's funny when I fucking cry? Oh my God. Oh my fucking God. Like that? Like that? Is that what you does that give you what you wanted? Yeah, more clip. I'm sorry for blowing out the mic twice. First with a Christopher Plummer scream, and then with crying. I apologize. Blame Pedro. He asked me to do it. I had no choice. Radical Bacon says, "Would you go to a play to see Avery Brooks?" Sure. I mean, not right now, obviously, COVID. But yeah, if I would go see a play to see Avery Brooks. Yeah, for sure. Bovacat has a super chat that says, would you vote for Trump over Putin if Putin went on to rule for 30 years and turned democracy into Russia, and if he didn't and only ruled for 4 years? I guess I would vote for Trump over Putin, yeah. Wouldn't be happy about it. Some random geek. Hey, Steve. Varjak is in the chat. Where's Pierre? I have no idea. As usual, I have no fucking idea. I'm going to guess France. Oh, thank you, Pedro. Best cry ever? I don't know about that. I don't even know if that was my best cry ever, but I appreciate it. John Burns. Avery Brooks says Othello. Maybe. I don't know. He might be a little old for the part now, but maybe. I mean, I wouldn't say no. I mean, like if I heard, tomorrow that there's a new Othello production coming out and Avery Brooks was playing Othello, I mean, it's not like I would say, oh, that's going to suck, you know? Radical Bacon says, what's my acting process? It's very much like the way that Ian McKellen describes his process in that episode of Extras, where he's like, what I do is I imagine what it would be like to be a wizard, and then I act in that way on the day. How do I know what to say? The words were written down for me in a script. How did I know where to stand? People told me. That is my process. I imagine what I should be acting like, and then I try my best with my extremely limited abilities to approximate that as much as I can. Yeah, Emily Chambers, isn't Avery Brooks a musician now? And some random geek says, I think he was always a musician. And he always treats acting like jazz. Yeah, that's true. That's true. I'm not sure how long he's been a musician. I mean, I guess he's primarily a musician now, I suppose. You know, but yeah, I mean, he was certainly in the what was the Captain's documentary when he was playing the piano the whole time during his interview. Yeah. Oh, a super chat from Crud Butts. Yeah, and Radical Bacon. Yes, he did sing in DS9. Correct. Yeah, and he's good. He's real good. And when he did the Best Is Yet to Come duet with Vic Fontaine, he's good. Anyway, super chat from Crudbutts. He says, Steve, I've now survived 1 year as a U.S. non-resident alien or whatever, and what a year it's been. Thanks for encouraging me to stick around in one of these askaways when things were looking pretty bad. I feel at home here. Well, that's really good to hear. Thank you for the super chat, obviously, and thank you. I'm so happy to hear that things are going well for you, or that you decided to stick around at least, and that things are better than they were when they were looking pretty bad. I don't know if things are great now, but hopefully things are better. Yeah. So. Another super chat from Vovacat, who says, you said they can't handle democracy as racist, but is we can't handle democracy racist? A form of self-hate, which all Russians have with all, maybe not racist if it's directed at yourselves, but yeah, I think self-hate is definitely an apt description for sure. Yeah. And I just don't think it's true. I mean, I just don't think that there's anything particular about Russian people that means they can't handle democracy. Yeah, internalized racism. Yeah, Jamie in the chat says, yeah, internalized racism. That maybe it's that. Yeah. And yeah, Jamie, I hear you about extras. I mean, Um, Extras, and especially the original version of The Office. Um, Two of my favorite shows, but particularly The Office, but Extras is really good too. And they have really, I mean, you really have to, I mean, because Ricky Gervais is the star and the writer, director, he's all over it. And now that we know what a fucking dick he is in real life, what an absolute, unrepentant, transphobic, condescending, just like narcissistic, self-obsessed. It's like at some point he turned into the characters he was playing on the show. It's like at some point he became David Brent, and he realized, he forgot that David Brent is, you're not, I mean, there are times when you're meant to be sympathetic with him, but he's pathetic, and he's comical, and he's in the wrong. Like, you're not supposed to be on his side in that way. And it's like he completely forgot about that, and now he's just David Brent in real life. And it's really, really disappointing and frustrating. So if you can overlook that, and maybe you can't, and that's fine, but if you can overlook that, I think The Office and Extras are both absolutely brilliant shows. But it is a shame that Ricky Gervais has turned out to be such a shit, you know. Yeah, some random game, which proves it wasn't acting for Ricky Gervais. He was just being himself and saying, yeah, maybe. 255 AD says, do you think It Can't Happen Here would make a good TV show? Like, it could be an alt history show about the U.S. going fascist in the Depression, like Man in the High Castle. I would love that. I think It Can't Happen Here is a great novel for anybody who hasn't read it. And I would love to see a movie or a TV series or something adapted from that. Cause yeah, I for sure, I think it would be, the source material is definitely strong enough for something like that. Vovacat has another super chat that says, more like internalized peasant serfdom, because remember, Russia was never a colonial empire. We didn't need other people to enslave. We enslaved our own. Ooh, a very good and depressing point. Another super chat from John Burns said, would removing U.S. capitalism be unconstitutional? Not necessarily. I don't know. I mean, I don't think there's anything in the Constitution that would prevent. I mean, you could always amend the Constitution to say we're not going to have a capitalist economy anymore. Like, that wouldn't be, I don't see what would stop us from doing that if there was enough popular support for it. So no, not ending capitalism isn't necessarily unconstitutional. No, I wouldn't say so. I don't even know. And you wouldn't even really need a constitution. Like, there's nothing in the Constitution that requires that the economy be a capitalist economy. There may be some changes you need to make. Maybe. I can't think of any right, but I mean, I don't think you would even need to do an amendment, you know? Yeah, see, exactly. See, I don't think capitalism is in the Constitution. Neither do I. Lisa Garrison says, did you ever play D&D to hone your acting skills? By the way, in the chat, we were trying to figure out what classes the Trek characters would be. And I have never played D&D in my life. I've never been interested in playing D&D in my life. Now, that I don't mean to say that that's no disrespect meant to the D&D players who are watching. Some of my best friends have been D&D players, so therefore I can't hate them, because that's how that works. I've never played D&D and never wanted to play D&D. I guess the only way I've ever honed my acting skills is by just sort of horsing around with friends, and just, when I was a kid, like, I would use my imagination and like play with like action figures or stuffed animals and stuff, and just sort of get accustomed to getting into the headspace of different characters. But other than that, or, like, no, I certainly never played D&D. Jamie asked, what varieties of role playing did you use to practice your acting skills? I mean, we would play when I was a kid. Me and my friends from my neighborhood, we would get together and play just like typical, like, like stereotypical like little boy shit. Like we would play war, or we would play like we act out little scenes or little scenarios where we would be like pretend we were grown-ups and we were going hunting, or we were chasing somebody, or we were soldiers at a war, and or like cops and robbers, stuff like that. And you would pretend that you were either someone else or that you were a different version of yourself. You were a grown-up version of yourself, or yourself but in the army, or yourself but an astronaut, or yourself but whatever. And we would do that. That was the main way that we played when we were kids, and even into when we were teenagers, like maybe early high school, like we would still kind of do stuff like that. um, and then it sort of morphed into doing it to make fun of each other, or to crack each other up, to sort of get a rise out of each other. But there was this stuff like that, just sort of hanging out with friends and adopting different personas, or adopting different voices or different characters, just all very very sort of informal like that. That's probably where most of it. And then eventually, when I started writing, I would write scripts, or I would come up with ideas or scenarios, without a script. But I would just say, you'll be this guy and you'll be that guy and I'll be this guy, and this is what I want and this is who you, and basically like an improv scene. you know I didn't really think of it that way, and it probably wasn't exactly like that. But yeah, you know stuff like that. And also we did a little teensy tiny bit of backyard wrestling as well. We never had a ring or anything, and there was probably only, at most, there was maybe half a dozen of us, and usually there was only like three or four of us. But we would do backyard wrestling as well, and you would play a character, you would adopt a gimmick and cut a promo on people, and you would be different than you normally are, and that was a form of role playing too. Um, let me see. Yes, Barjack. Thankfully, Steve outgrew the whole playing with stuffed animals thing. Radical Bacon. What don't I like about D&D? I don't. I'm the rules. The fact that it's an organized, that there's rules to it, that you have to roll dice, and the fact that it's like a game. Like I would, my, 'cause I've had many friends in the past who have been like, not just D&D, but like into role playing games in general, and I've just never understood the appeal, because I've always been like, just write a story. Just get, or if you have some friends together and you want to like hang out with your friends and do, like, just do a scene. Like, do like an improv scene, like play characters and just do a scene. Why does it have to be a game? Like, I don't get the appeal of that at all. Other people do, and great. Like, but it's never seemed fun to me at all to make it into a game with rules and procedures and everybody taking turns. It's like, God, if what you care about is like is coming up with characters and playing characters, just do that. Like, why does it have to be a game? I don't get that. But like I said, it's not my thing. It's never been for me. Um, some super chats to catch up on. Vovacat says, but internalized serfdom and slave mentality sounds a lot like blaming the victim. What if that's the only reason why we don't have democracy yet? How do you address it on a national level? I mean, I can see that. Like, I understand that. It's not necessarily blaming the victim. I feel like Russians maybe have been victimized by other Russians, you know? Like, so it's not the people's fault. It's the fault of the people that have exploited them, but it's all Russians doing it to each other, it seems like. Um, you know, and how do you address it on a national level? Like, I don't really know. Super chat from Michael Hanline says, I figured you'd have no love for D&D because of high fantasy tropes. Would you ever be interested in a tabletop RPG based on Trek or something? No, probably not. Probably not. Super chat from John Byrne says, don't you agree that the concept of super delegates is equivalent to delegates in the Electoral Congress? Silly while the Democrats whine about the EC. It's similar. I don't know. I mean, super delegates, I would be fine if they got rid of super delegates. Like, I'm not attached to the concept. And I don't know if it's exactly the same as the Electoral College. Maybe it's similar a little bit, but I don't think it's necessarily inconsistent that it's not necessarily inconsistent to be okay with the Electoral College, but not okay with superdelegates. In theory, the Electoral College is supposed to at least reflect the will of the voters, even though it's an unnecessary institution that at least within the individual states, the electors are chosen by the voters. So it's not quite the same as superdelegates. Super Jet from Siamak, who says, so Elnor means Star Trek in Tolkien Elvish. Radical Bacon said that, but he wants me to see it. Yeah, okay. Don't. Please stop trying to ruin Star Trek for me by talking about how it has stealth high fantasy shit in it. I beg you. Subrandom Geek, I was expecting you to say that. I said that I don't like the rules in D&D, so therefore I love anarchy. Yes. Exactly. In this one case, exactly. 255 AD asks, when you read It Can't Happen Here, were you skeptical of the fascist being a Democrat? Even before the Southern switch, most American fascists were allied with the GOP. I wasn't skeptical. I mean, I assumed that it probably wouldn't go that way in real life, and so far it hasn't. But I mean, it's not like it's impossible. It's possible for a fascist who is a Democrat to rise to power, to grow. I mean, there are Democratic talking points, Democratic positions and beliefs that could be misused by a fascist or by an authoritarian rising to power. So I don't think it's impossible. But no, I wasn't like overly skeptical of it, but I don't think that's how it would really happen. Probably not. John Burns has another super chat that says, is it possible that the powerful members of China and Russia don't like to share power, like, say, a Trump, and since you can't invade them like Germany? Well, I don't think Trump necessarily likes to share. Yeah, Trump doesn't like to share power either. I guess that's your point. You're saying they're like, say, a Trump. Well, yeah, I mean, I think they're definitely an entrenched sort of oligarchy in charge. Yeah, I think you're definitely onto something there. And I just saw that Jason is asking to show my high school photo. I think I've shown it before. Let me see if I can find it. And if I can find it, I'll show it to you. Let me see. Yeah, I've got it. Let me load it into the program. I'll show you my goddamn high school picture. You think I won't? Let me see. I'll just start a new scene, and you can't see it yet, but you'll see it in a second. Have to do this shit on the fly. Jason just asks for shit. He's like, "Hey, show us your high school picture." Like I'm supposed, and I mean, it just fucks up the flow of the show. But Jason doesn't care. Does Jason care? He doesn't. He doesn't care. Anyway, so what I'm about to show you is my high school yearbook photo. I know I've shown this to you before. Maybe not shown it to Jason, but I've shown it to people before. So here it is. There you go. Can you see that? Yeah, you can see that. That's my senior picture. That's me from high school. So there you go. What do you think of that? Huh? You like that? Is that what you wanted? Jason, get a good look. Everybody, get a good look. That's me from high school. That's 17-year-old Steve. What do you think of that? Yeah? Geek's seen that photo before because he watches my shit, Jason. Fucking. Yeah, that's right, Dana. It's baby Steve. That's exactly who it is. But yeah. So there you go. What do you think of that? And if anybody had a problem with that, you should blame Jason because he's the one who demanded it. He gave me no choice. Super chat from John Burns says, Tell me about LBJ's Democratic policies. Who am I? Doris Kearns Goodwin? You know how he had some good ideas and led the U.S. from advisors in Vietnam to a full fledged. Well, yeah, Vietnam I think was the major black mark on LBJ's presidency. I think domestically he was great. I wish we had more presidents like LBJ in terms of domestic policy, but his foreign policy was defined by expanding the Vietnam War, and that was a disgrace. Like there's no getting around it. I think he was a great president domestically and a terrible president in terms of foreign policy. Um, yes, Daryl, I was actually clean shaven. Um, Radical Bacon says, "Do I still fit into the tux? Probably not. I haven't. I'm not. My body isn't that different than it was when I was in high school. I am. I have filled out a little bit. I'm not quite as skinny as I was in high school, so I don't think I would still fit into the tux. No." um, 255 AD, did they make you take off the hat before the picture? They didn't make me. Like I was willing to, but yeah, obviously I took it off. Like I don't have it on. I think I probably asked if I could have it on, and I think my granny came. My granny went with me to get the picture taken, and I was like, "You think I could just leave my hat on?" And she just kind of gave me like a granny look, like, "No, you take the hat off." So I took the hat off. So there are no high school pictures of me with my hat on, but I would have had it on. Believe me, I probably put it. I'm pretty sure I put it right back on as soon as I changed and was leaving the photo studio. Um, Oh, queer pro black. This is a good one. Dem control of House and Senate. Other than ACA, any laws you hope they pass? I mean, the raising the minimum wage, I think would be great. If I'm really shooting like pie in the sky, going. I would love to see universal basic income, but that's not going to happen. That's not even really on the table. But in an ideal world with a democratically controlled Senate and House and White House, like universal basic income is a big thing for me. But yeah, raising the minimum wage in terms of things that are actually plausible in the near future that could happen. That's a big one. I'd like to see it be more than $15 an hour, but $15 an hour is I mean, if that's what we get, I will take that, and then and then keep pushing for more from that point on. Um, Pedro asks, "What's your favorite movie theme or soundtrack?" Ooh, that's a good one. Mine's probably Donner's Superman, or maybe Basil Podolaris's masterpiece for Conan, or maybe The Shining, The Exorcist. Those are all really good choices. My favorite movie theme. God, there's so many to choose from. I tell you what, I used to really, really love uh, the theme song from Glory. I used to really, really, and I still do. I can't say used to. Like I love the theme from Glory. Um, I love a lot of the Star Trek movie themes. I love the score from Star Trek 2. I love the score from Star Trek 6. I love the score from Star Trek First Contact. I love Michael Giacchino's score from the Kelvin movies. I think a lot of that is just fucking gorgeous. Yeah, and John Williams I think is great, and Superman and Star Wars and Jurassic Park was one that I listened to a lot. It's hard for me to pick a favorite. It's honestly hard for me to pick a favorite because there have been so many beautiful film scores that I have loved over the years. Um, I'm not sure what I would say if I had to pick my favorite. Super chat from Austin LaPlante. What do you think of All the President's Men? The politicians in it, and It Can't Happen Here, are based on the same person, Huey Long, who was a Democrat. That's a great point. Huey Long was the basis for All the King's Men was Huey Long. All the President's Men was the Watergate movie, but All the King's Men was based on Huey Long. And also he was also the basis for It Can't Happen Here. Yeah, he was a Democrat. You're right, and that's probably the best example I could think of why it's not that implausible that it could be a Democrat. Because yeah, Huey Long was a real person. Super chat from Crudbutts. I'm rewatching Deep Space Nine and can't believe how great and horny this show is. House of Quark, looking for Parmok, let he who is without sin. Yeah, there are some horny episodes of DS9 for sure. There was Dana had a question earlier that I didn't get to. Oh yeah, Dana asks, we got to see my favorite episode of Firefly this week. How close is your favorite episode of season 1 DS9? Oh, interesting. Season 1 DS9, my favorite episode is probably Duet. And let me see how far we are from that. We're still quite a ways away. Duet will be the second to last episode of season 1 that we watch. So we're still a good ways away from it, but that's my favorite. Although the one right before that, Dramatis Personae, is also one of my favorites. It's not many other people's favorites, but I love that episode because you get to see Avery Brooks overact his fucking face off. It is so great. I missed a super chat from John Burns earlier who said, fortunately, LBJ was followed by Nixon, who led the U.S. out of Vietnam. Plus, Nixon would eventually lead to Carter, so all's well that ends well. I guess if you want to give Nixon credit for Carter, yeah, yeah, we can go with that. And then also a super chat from Vovacat who said, things will be weird in 50 years. Things that will be weird in 50 years having guns. Oh, God, I hope so, man. God, I hope so. Let me see. Super chat from Eric who says, all right, Steve, Alien or Aliens? Which do you like better and why? If I had to pick, I think I prefer Alien. I think I prefer Alien to Aliens. I mean, they're both great. They're both great movies, but I like Alien better. I guess because it's more of a suspense movie than an action movie. I like there only being one alien and it being loose on the ship. And more of sort of a horror movie as opposed to an action movie. I mean, Aliens is fantastic too. Don't get me wrong, but I think if I had to pick, I would say Alien is my favorite. Emily, you are right. Avery Brooks can chew some scenery. His when he goes off on his unhinged rant at the end of Dramatis Personae, when he and Kira are confronting each other in the cargo bay, and he's like, but unlike you, I understand history. My name will blaze across the stars long after your petty treacheries have been forgotten. Like, fuck, that is great. Fuck, that is great. John Burns super chat. If it's weird having a gun in 50 years, happy cops. Well, hopefully most of them won't have them either. Lisa Garrison says, "Do you?" Norman Bookwald. Yes, it's a clock. It's a clock. And then, of course, when he jumps up from behind the desk and screams, "Never!" When O'Brien says, "We might have to evacuate the station." Never. Oh, I love it. God damn, I love that episode. Anyway, Lisa says, do you want to camp about how cool Philosophy 2 is for me? I am so fucking happy for her. That was such a great video, and she looks so happy and so just, comfortable in herself now that she has come out as a woman. She's great. She is great. I am so glad to know her to the extent that I do. She and I have never been like super close friends, but I know her well enough that if I respond to her on Twitter, I'll get a reply or a like or something. Usually, like, she's not, she's not like a super close friend, but I am so proud to know her to the extent that I do. And so happy for her and so impressed by her. She's awesome. She's really awesome. CMX says, oh, I guess I missed a super chat from Jacob. I'm sorry, Jacob. Theoretically speaking, an amendment can be vetoed by states that represent as little as 1% of the U.S. population. Will we ever see one again? I wouldn't say we'll never see another amendment again. I think we'll probably see another one, sure. I mean, I don't know how long it'll be or what that amendment will be, but I wouldn't say that it's impossible that we'll ever see one again. No. Crudbutts, how do you get a reply and a like from me on Twitter? Have I never given you one? I don't know. I mean, just I don't know, say something that I notice and that I think is good. I don't know. It's not like it's not like there's proper channels. Yeah, Varjik, I don't see the need to choose a favorite either, but I was asked, so you know. I just kind of picked one. Super chat from Crudbutts who says you have $10,000 cash to spend on creating a piece of art. What do you do? I make a movie. I don't know what the movie is going to be. I have no idea what it's going to be, but I'm definitely making a movie. Yes, Dana, I'm pandering by answering the question that somebody asked me. Crudbutt shoestring budget? Yeah, I mean shoestring budget. Yeah, in this compared to most movies, but I think I could do a hell of a lot with $10,000. It wouldn't be like a major studio motion picture, but I think I could make a decent movie for $10,000. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Clerks. Yeah. Juice and BG said Clerk. Yeah, I think Clerks was 30,000, and that was shot on film in the 90s. So I think with $10,000 and digital cameras and stuff I mean, like I say, it wouldn't be a major production, but I think I could definitely make a decent movie. And somebody said a short. Yeah, but I could probably do a feature for 10,000. Like I say, I wouldn't be, it would be fairly modest, obviously, but I think I could totally do that. Yeah. Vovacat, I did not see the chicken video. So about the Lincoln Project, I haven't really been paying a lot of attention to the Lincoln Project. If I didn't see the chicken video, I'll take your word for it that it's good. Some random geek says, "Take the 10,000 and make Titans, but better." With lots of like really obvious name, like instead of Nightwing, he's like Duskwing or something. Just change the names to get around the copyrights. Yeah. Yeah, some random geek. Yeah, 10,000 would be a good budget for a Stuffy and Friends movie for sure. Yeah, maybe that's what I would do. Maybe I would make the Stuffy movie. I have no idea what it would be about, but it would be something. Maybe I could afford to hire other human actors to be on screen so that Steve would not be the only human character. Super chat from John Burns. Quark to the doctor. What have we been doing? No, yeah, Vard, that is a terrifying thought. CGI Stuffy. Although I'll tell you what, if I had the money and I thought I could get it done properly, I would totally be up for like an animated Stuffy series. I would totally do like animated Stuffy, like just as a cartoon, like purely a cartoon, not like live action, not like, you know, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, where it would be like an animated Stuffy and a real me. It would be a total animation, but featuring, you know, Stuffy and other characters. Like I would totally want to try something like that. It would be like the Saturday morning cartoon version of Steve and Stuffy, or Stuffy and Friends. I would totally be down for that. And Lisa, yes, I followed that on Twitter. Abigail trying to get the rights to use that song, which I'm so glad she did, because that song is such a great part of that video, isn't it? For sure. Yeah, I followed her and her trials and travails on Twitter about that. I'm glad that she obviously was eventually able to secure the rights to that. Do I think we'll ever see a sane version of copyright law? Probably not as much as there should be. It might get better than it is. Dana says, "Would I provide the voice for animated Steve?" Yes, of course. I would provide the voices for all of the characters that I regularly voice. Yeah, I would do Stuffy, and I would do Jack, and I would do Hans, and I would do. I guess if we're gonna have Joff in it, I would do Joff. Those are the of those. I think those are the only remaining characters that I do the voices for. So yeah, I would do the voices for if Steve was in it, I would do the voice of animated Steve, and I would do Stuffy and the other characters I usually voice for sure. Yeah. Opinion Phil says, I could easily convert all of the Stuffy verse into puppets. Give me your animal friends. You can trust your old pal Jason. I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that, man. I'm sorry. I can't do it. Can't do it, brother. Doesn't work for me, brother. Um, Varjak, we've actually talked about that. Not, I don't think we've ever talked about it seriously, but we've played with the idea to amuse ourselves of me doing voices of Opinionville characters and Jason doing voices of Stuffy characters, not telling anyone about it, not acknowledging it or explaining it at all, just doing it like for one episode each and then going back to normal, just, you know, to see what people would do. That would be that would be hilarious. But no, I don't think we've ever seriously talked about that, but it has come up in discussions. Queer Pro Black says, wouldn't mind seeing Avery or some older in age Star Trek personalities come back for a more story driven series. Not so much action, but great dialogue. I agree. I think that'd be fantastic. I think that would be really cool. Dana asks, if you couldn't voice Stuffy but could hire any professional actor, who would you get? Jason. Is that cheating to say Jason? He's a professional actor. He's been on the stage. And if I couldn't get Jason, God, I don't know. Frank Welker? I don't know. Fuck. Oh God, Jason wants me to do please do an Oswald impression. It's me, Oswald. Hello, everybody. That's like so bad. That's the worst Oswald impression you've ever heard. I can't do Oswald at all. That's what you ask for. That's what you get. Some random geek. How big should your next Patreon goal be to make this Stuffy and Friends feature? $10,000. Clearly, $10,000. It's totally cheating, you asshole. Well, I gave you a real one after that. I don't know. I don't know. One of the Animaniacs guys. Fuck. I don't know. Dana. I don't know. Anyway, okay. I think I'm going to wrap this up now. I think we have come to an end point to the evening's festivities. So the first thing I want to do, Radical Bacon, maybe you could do some voices since your very first job was doing voiceover work. That's cool. The first thing I want to do before I wrap things up is I want to remind everybody about the charity links that are in the description of the video. Opinion. Oh my God, Jace. Yes. Oppenheimer, the voice of Skeletor. Yes, absolutely. I think I can do a better Skeletor than I can do an Oswald. I'm not. I'm no Alan Oppenheimer at all, but I think I have a better Skeletor than I have an Oswald. I'll get you for this, Steve. There's Skeletor. There's some Skeletor is stuffy. Anyway, don't forget the charity links linked in the description. Don't forget that in addition to YouTube, I co-host a couple of podcasts on the Let Me Listen podcast family of podcasts, including Late Seating, where Jason and I review classic films, and also the Ensign's Log, the Star Trek themed comedy podcast starring Jason and also starring the wonderful Dana. And we have our second to last episode of the season is up right now. It came out this week. So listen to that and listen in 2 weeks for the season finale. It is almost here. We are recording it this weekend. The final episode of season 3 of the Ensign's Log is finally almost here for us as performers and a little bit further away for you as an audience, but still almost here. It's really, really cool, really exciting. I have no idea what we're going to do. But it's awesome. So listen to all of the awesome Let Me Listen podcasts at letmelistenpodcast.com. Support what I do here on this channel by going to patreon.com/Steve Shives. I guess if I ever get to $10,000 a month, I'll do a Steve or a Stuffy and Friends movie. Sure. Okay. That's an unrealistic goal, but let's just throw it out there. And you can support my work however high the Patreon level gets by going to patreon.com/Steve Shives. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. I will see you Monday for another conversation stream where my guest will be Reverend Junia Joplin, and Dana and I will be back on Wednesday night for another Trek Reluctantly, where we will watch the Deep Space Nine episode Dax. And then a week from tonight, Dana and I will be back again to talk about Chapter 8 of The Dispossessed. Plus, there's another comment response video with me and Dana going up on Monday. And on Wednesday, I also have another Where Do We Go From Here video coming out that I finished writing today, and I'm going to shoot this weekend. So yeah, whole bunch of stuff coming up in the next week or so on the channel. Thanks so much for watching. Have a good weekend, everybody. Stay safe. Take care. And I'll see you next time.